The story of Sicily, our third report. This report covers the rapid advance of the 8th Army after the first footholds in the southeast corner of the island had been strongly secured. Tanks and guns and supplies on their way up north in the direction of Floridia, Francofonte, Vizzini and Lentini. All of them towns occupied some days before the heavy fighting south of Catania. The early advance was certainly a high-speed push. That's not surprising when we get this glimpse of the weight of material landed. Also, the enemy had failed to destroy quite a number of bridges, which must have helped considerably. Of course, the advance may not have felt so rapid to infantry on the march, for Sicily in July is pretty hot, and there was plenty of mopping up to be done by the PBI, even though the main strength of the enemy resistance was concentrated at Catania. After every advance right up to Catania, the enemy had to be blasted from each new position, and the guns of the 8th did the job with their usual thoroughness. Field guns, priests, and tanks. Meanwhile, the commander of the 8th was himself very much on the spot, driving along the coast road and summing up the situation. Town after town had quickly fallen not only to the 8th, but to the Canadians and the Americans on the left flank as well. The overrunning of Sicily was rapidly becoming an accomplished fact. Town after town was taken, and it seemed as if the people of Sicily were anything but displeased. Apparently, they had a sincere welcome for the British. Is it possible they failed to swallow Mussolini's bombastic stories about bloated plutocrats and all that? The truth is that not only were they in a hurry to meet the invaders, but they now began to see some hope for the future. Anyway, they dispensed what hospitality they could: oranges, lemons, wine, and so on. And they soon found out that their view of the invasion was the right one. The Allies had not come to plunder and kill. They'd come to kick out the fascists and the Nazis. And when our men found a trainload of flour left behind by the Italians, they distributed the whole lot to the civilian population. A fairly hungry population it was, to judge by the picture. As for prisoners, well, as we know, they came in by hundreds and by thousands. Prisoners, 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 with and without white flags. Go on, gotcha. Get up them stairs. With and without escorts. None of them look as if they want to make a break, but if they did, they'd be asking for trouble, all right. A few disgruntled Germans, but mostly Italians. Those taken prisoner are the lucky Italians. Comrades who gave their lives, gave them to an unjust cause under infamous leadership. One man above all others led them to their fate. One man more than any other sacrificed them to his own grasping ambition. Though we laugh at Mussolini, the dictator who resigned, we should never forget the misery he has caused to his own people and those of other nations. And he it was who made the model from which Hitler designed the Nazi edifice. Both criminals armed and plotted, but Mussolini's arming lacked the German efficiency. Behind the Italian showmanship, the show was rotten. His troops, even trained to parade at the double, have failed to stand up to war. Their mobility has only been useful when they were going instead of coming. Now, King Victor Emmanuel III, who backed Mussolini and the fascists for years, presumably hoped to save something from the Italian wreck by substituting another so-called strong man. Curiously enough, Marshal Badoglio, who wanted to suppress the fascists right at the beginning when the king refused to allow it. Badoglio, however, is no shining hero. Witness his record in Abyssinia, where he ruthlessly bombed the unarmed people and treated them to the civilizing influence of mustard gas. Mussolini, who learnt to speak English, German, and French, here he is with Laval, one of his friends, once told the world through Movietone how he longed only for peace. This was 9 years after he came to power.
How can anyone think that I should look without horror upon the eventuality of a war?
How he loved a peace, and how devoted he was to little bambinos. You can't blame the kid, can you? Well, the great dictator who ruled and conquered for over 20 years has lost everything and resigned. Mussolini, the flop, the lackey, the merest utensil of his master's will. Now the Duce is ducked. Who's next?